What's up, guys? John Beaupre, aka Casino Crime here. And if you are a regular member on the site, my voice is probably becoming pretty familiar with you. Hey, today we're here to talk about some PLO, which is kind of what I do nowadays. And we're going to continue with what we did last time, which was we are reviewing a video by one of my new students who is a transitioning no limit player, been pretty successful at the mid stakes, and is now looking to transition to PLO to round out his game. You know, he sees the promise that PLO has in terms of profitability for guys that kind of know how to think or have good logical thought processes with PLO. And maybe they're bored of No Limit. Maybe they just want to have some other options other than grinding the 2-card game. So I'm just going to kind of pick it back up and go from there. You know, last time we talked a lot about getting some player reads and kind of like the overall approach at PLO Zoom tables. So if you missed that, please go back and check this out or check that out. Otherwise, today I'm just going to be kind of doing a discussion about my overall approach in these hands. So I actually think this is kind of an interesting spot on table 2. Not really super interesting, I guess, but this is a hand that probably looks pretty strong to new Hold'em players. I'll just actually say recovering Hold'em players. But so a couple of things here, all right? Number one being that this hand is good, right? But you have to remember that it's good for particular types of situations, and I can run through them real quickly. Number one being that this is a hand whose value goes down significantly into different scenarios. One is like if people are extremely short, and also when they have extremely tight preflop ranges. So this is a hand that doesn't necessarily play very well against like a really tight short stacker. Just because, you know, it does poorly against aces and kings. It's not really great against like Broadway hands. I mean, it's decent depending if it's paired or not. But really, realistically, I prefer to play this hand preflop when we're stacks are a little bit deeper. You know, something kind of benefit of these like middling pocket pair hands that I think doesn't get talked about often enough is their blocker value on straightening boards. You know, the most often, you know, like pocket tens, for example. Like a lot of times I like peeling pocket tens and pocket jacks type hands because those are going to be the blockers to the nuts straight on a lot of different boards. So that's nice. Second being that this is the type of hand that actually has the wider the preflop range, the greater value that a hand like this has. And I'll tell you why. Because especially when you're playing preflop limping ranges, you know, people kind of have like weak pocket pairs in their limping range pre. It's kind of like in Hold'em where back in the day, sort of the thing for players to do was to quote unquote see a cheap flop with middling pocket pairs. And I think that a lot of the kind of weaker or fishier players kind of still subscribe to that theory. So you'll see a lot of like limping with middling pocket pairs. So although a lot of people are kind of scared of getting overset in PLO and they think that middling pocket pairs have a higher chance of getting overset, which is true. You certainly, you know, pocket jacks is certainly capable of oversetting players who are willing to limp a lot of weak stuff. So that's nice. I think that these hands really do, like I'll even 3-bet this against a particularly loose range when I'm not concerned about getting 4-bet, particularly when deeper. So all of that being said, whether I raise preflop in this particular situation would actually be dependent on the big blind. I think if the big blind was particularly tough or if he was particularly loose, whether it be like with 3-betting or with just peeling in general, I'd lean more towards just completing. And again, we talked pretty extensively last time about kind of the issue that I have with having a HUD this big. I think it's just kind of information overload. And in fact, I think that in order to beat stakes that are this small, I really don't think that you need like that, all of this info on your HUD. I think that it could be a distraction. Now, knowing what I know now, I think that this particular player, like my new student, I think that he actually probably uses most of this HUD stuff because he's a pretty advanced player at no limit. So if it helps him, then it helps him, and if it makes him feel more comfortable, then so be it. But from my experience, I think that like 90% of players, they really just kind of have an oversized HUD. So I would raise here. Like the big blind doesn't look particularly tough. We don't have a lot of info on him, but for the most part, I think that it's pretty safe. It'd be pretty safe to raise here, and play. Even though we're going to be out of position, I still think that like there's going to be enough good flops for us to continue. As played, an important thing to talk about is that people's multi-way c-betting ranges are much more passive. So typically when I have the option of leading with value hands or like with good hands that have a lot of opportunity to continue aggression on later streets, I usually do it if it's multi-way, just because I think that people are a lot more likely to check, and our hand is just so good, and we're definitely going to be getting called by dominated straight draws and stuff like that. So we want to build a pot, backdoor straight draw, nut flush, or nut straight draw. Let's build a pot. So I prefer leading just because people are so much more passive in multi-way pots than they are in heads-up pots. I think even in a heads-up pot against like these guys, I'd probably lead, but if it was somehow limped, if it was limped to me, I'd typically raise with this hand. So I'm curious to see exactly what the action is. On table 4, I know that we 3-bet pre, so let's pick up the action on the flop. So we do decide to c-bet with top pair and a gutter. No backdoor flush draw, unfortunately. It depends a lot on the player whether I decide to c-bet here or not. I could probably get behind a check call. I think that a couple of things that are important to mention. One is that in 3-bet pots, these are going to kind of these are going to be these are sort of going to be I don't know what the word is I'm looking for, but these kind of things are going to kind of contradict each other. First being that if it's close between betting and checking in 3-bet pots when I'm out of position, I typically lean towards betting. You can choose a sizing that gives you a good price on the c-bet. I think that like a lot of people, maybe their fold to c-bet percentage is going to be high. They still, even though it's PLO and you get 4 cards, people still miss a lot, so they're going to give you credit. And especially when you 3-bet button ranges that are particularly loose, people are just going to miss the flop a lot. So, you can c-bet and take it down, so that's nice. But on the other hand, when I'm playing 3-bet pots, I really play the board texture more than I do my actual hand. So I think that in that case, like this is a board that certainly is much better for our opponent's range. Like a button opening and 3-bet calling range connects much better with this board than our hand. So, given that this guy seems competent, he's playing a 30/21, and I could see him maybe playing back at us on this board, especially since it's good for his range. I prefer checking. And, you can balance that by, having a good check raising range here with like having a, having like a 3-betting range that has some like pretty good board coverage and stuff like that. So I prefer checking. I think that like we can start with a check. We could delayed c-bet some static turns like a board pair or like a club filling turn. So that's pretty nice. And I think that like, we could check call and hopefully, we could bink a 4. And I think that that's a turn that he's going to bet a lot. Or we could bink an 8 and like check raise all in and stuff like that. So that's good. So, and you can see that c-betting here kind of sets up like an awkward, it sets up like kind of an awkward SPR for us. And because of what I said about this board being so much better for our opponent's range than our range, I kind of prefer just like checking and calling and then going from there. So as played, and you can see like this is a really bad turn for us. It's just there's too many opportunities for him to float. We have like a non-nut non-nut straight draw. We have a double gutter, but only one of them is to the nuts, and it's a two-tone board, so it makes it much less relevant. You can see like, and actually as played, I really like the river bet. I mean, you're going to see some light calls because we gave him a good price, and we can't really see what he had. But I think that like because the price was good, because it's just like you might even you're going to see yourself get called here by like two pairs and stuff like that even. So I don't know. I mean, I think it's an okay bet because we gave ourselves a pretty good price, and we're just trying to fold out one pair of hands that beat us. But don't be surprised if you just like beat here most of the time. Or at least you get called, I should say. Here on the button with ace, ace, jack, 6 rainbow. And I know I'm stopping the video a lot, but these are actually pretty interesting spots, and I think they're good to talk about. So one question that I get pretty often is, should I be 3-betting rainbow aces? And I think that there are situations where you should and where you shouldn't. One being when you shouldn't is when I think you actually have a tight image, right? If you have a tight image and people put you on aces, well, people will probably try to bust you when they think that you have like a face-up range. And when you have the weaker part of your aces range, you're not going to have as many good flops for you that continue that you can like you're willing to stack off on. So I think that if you have like a tight image, then you should probably be peeling an aces hand like this. On the other hand, in situations where you have a very aggressive image, I think 3-betting this is okay. You're going to get, especially in today's games when people are more aggressive and they're better at judging good like cold 4-betting ranges and are going to be like 4-betting kings, then I like 3-betting this. If you have like if you have an aggressive image and people are going to be sticking in kings preflop, well, you don't really want to pass up the opportunity to be getting it in all in preflop in a very good situation. So I think that if you have a bad image, then you can 3-bet these in situations where you're going to get 4-bet light and you could get all in pre, then I would do it. Of course, here this is a good situation for and I'm kind of I guess it's interesting because we did get 3-bet, and I actually like our play. Like if we 4-bet and we're deep, like our ranges face up, and again, like for the same reason that I said that like I didn't necessarily like 3-betting because it's not very good for our range. So I like it, and I also like the c-bet. I mean, we talk like a little bit in other videos about we talk a lot about like polarizing your c-bets, right? And typically my rule of thumb is I don't like to polarize my c-bets unless my hand is good enough to call on pretty much any turn. And I think that this is a good example of that. I think that our hand certainly has some equity. Sometimes, of course, we're like getting it in terrible, but what's nice is we're deep. This is a board that connects better with our range, and we do have the ace of diamonds blocker, so on diamond runouts, we can apply a lot of pressure, which is nice. And I think that, this guy seems, let's look at his stats. He seems like he's got pretty aggressive stats overall, but I think that if we're beat, he's going to let us know. So I think that because we have a jack blocker, because we have an ace blocker, because like we want to keep the nuts in our range, I actually really like this bet. So I think it's cool. I mean, don't be shocked if, you get like played back at on those boards, I guess. But especially because we have 2 aces, I guess it's more likely he has rundown hands. But you can see that we just apply so much leverage with a bet like that. Here, I would like to see us 3-bet with the jack 9, 8, 7. I mean, this guy is a little bit on the tighter side, so I wouldn't be as thrilled about 3-betting. But the thing that would be nice about 3-betting is we would steal the button. And we'd also clean up our flush outs, which is nice. We'd really increase the likelihood that our spade draw is live. So And if we got 4-bet, this is a hand that plays pretty well against his 4-betting range. So I would prefer 3-betting. But of course, like as played, we're just going to call here and hope we flop something good. Interesting spot to check back. I like it. I mean, sometimes you can get away with a bet there, but I think that checking is certainly an option on table 1. Of course, we flop Jin on table 4. I think, there's a couple of ways. There's a couple of different lines that you can take on these boards. One is to like check call and lead, which I think is actually one option. And check calling and leading is good against people who are going to be like betting one with their being like one and done with their air, but will also like bet the flop with like an overpair and then try to get the showdown. So that's nice because like, check calling the flop and then leading, it kind of serves two purposes. You get value from their air, and you also don't let them check back their overpairs. Now, the problem with that is that it's pretty difficult to balance. I mean, people who can hand read will see, like, nobody takes that kind of line with air, right? It's pretty much never you would see someone take that with air. So they're going to make some pretty disciplined folds. You could also, I think that check calling is probably going to be the play. And I think that actually on the river here, I might check fold. I don't really see he's going to be just like showdown bound with overpairs. And it's a spot where I think he's always going to be value jamming flushes. And it's pretty much impossible for him to have floats at this point. So I actually think that I prefer just check folding. But we'll get to see what we do here. Could be a spot on table 3 where I would consider donk leading. We don't have any nut. Well, we have one nut blocker. But we do have equity in the pot with 2 backdoor flush draws. I think our 5 is probably live, and the 8 could be live too. So I kind of like donking. We're gonna have some leverage there, and it's a board that can certainly hit us when we call out of the big blind. It just depends kind of on like what level you think your opponents are on. And how high their c-betting frequency is. If someone's c-betting a lot, I prefer check raising. And now that I think about it more, I think that check raising is a good play. One reason is because if it checks through, we can still lead turns and take it down. If we lead, I think it also, most people will probably not give us credit for 8-9 because I think most people go for a check raise with 8-9. And it looks like we did make a disciplined fold with the trip 7s, which I think is good. Nice fold. Interesting spot on table 2. This is really opponent dependent. He's pretty tight. We have a 10 blocker though, and we have top 2. So I can't really see us doing too much else other than peeling and seeing what he does, especially since we're in position. So let's go back and make sure we get the action correctly here. Something tells me we get 3-bet, which we do. Cool. So this is another useful spot. I don't know what his rankings are, but just by judging the player types who are associated with pink, I think pink probably means good player or somebody who's competent. Who knows exactly what it means. And I think it's just a flop that really connects so hard with a 3-betting range in this kind of situation. Players' 3-betting frequencies are typically higher from the small blind than they are from the big blind because in the big blind you're already heads up, so you can just call and take a flop. And it's pretty low variance. But when people 3-bet from the big, their range is a lot stronger. Clearly, just outright folding is a poor play. You can just call and evaluate here. But if the turn was a brick and he barreled, I actually think I may fold. I think it's close, honestly. Depends on his sizing and stuff like that. But he should be pretty freaking strong for c-betting and barreling. I would say, pair and a nut flush draw at the minimum, which, like we have good odds against, but yeah. Semi-interesting spot on table 4 here. Make sure we get the action right. Looks like we probably called an open. Yep. Okay. And we flop great. I mean, gutter, pair, and then nut flush draw. It's like a flop that I could see myself even just raising for. Like if he c-bets, you can just raise. He's so light in sets, and people, when you're this deep, are not going to want to put in a ton of big blinds. And the other thing that's nice is, especially if you pick good raise sizing, I think like typically I would raise a little bit smaller. And the reason is because you can take it down some of the time, and you also can build a pot with hands that have reverse implied odds, which is nice. So I think that like if he c-bet, I actually probably would have raised. We get kind of a shitty run out. I think I would just check. I don't really want to turn 2-pair into a bluff, although I think that like given the action and whatnot, we could probably be beat here a decent amount. But I think we have enough showdown value to check. I'm torn between like, wanting to turn our hand into a bluff. I wish we could see what he had. Oh, there we go. Yeah. It's tough to say if he would have actually folded that. I think he would have called. He's pretty tight. Checking the hand history. Seeing what we could have done differently. And I might have missed a hand. I don't think I saw that trip aces hand. Let's go back. I think that was a hand from a different time. Yeah, it looks like it was. I was like, wow. I mean, I missed the trip aces hand. Okay, so we open under the gun and get called by under the gun +1. So in these kind of situations, it's just important to analyze who your opponent is and what their stabbing range is going to be. So the first place that I start is with seeing how tight they are pre. When you open under the gun and someone under the gun +1 calls you and they're a reg, and on the tighter side, it's almost always like really strong big cards, or like a lot. That's where you see a lot of pocket kings. It's like, I think that in today's games, most people, that's like a big piece of their strategy is playing a lot of single raise pots to, like with pocket kings and just trying to overset people. So that's where you're going to see a lot of people like putting in their pocket kings type hands. So it's a board that like shouldn't really connect well with his range. I like betting. I think that like he's still going to call with some overpairs, and maybe he could have like a flush draw on there somewhere. We want to get value from like an 8 inside cards, and I think that although we're certainly going to call 1 street, probably 2 streets at least. I mean, I think it's just I really don't like it taking passive lines out of position that much unless it's like pretty clear that I know what I'm inducing. You know what I'm saying? So I prefer betting. I think that like, especially since he's tighter pre-flop, he could have some overpairs and stuff that can call us. So I would just bet, which we do, and he folds. So my evaluation of my student here is that he's pretty damn good. I think I am curious to see or how much PLO he's played, but you can tell he's thinking about boards and he's thinking about ranges and he's picking up on weakness. So that's awesome. I'm impressed. I'm excited to continue to work with him. For people who are on, I would say someone like his level, I think that the next best step is to do like poker juice type work and really get more of a concrete idea about the frequencies in common situations, like how often people fill flushes and stuff like that. And we obviously stab here on the flop, and we're going to just bet again. Double gutter, nut flush draw, top pair. This is a beautiful hand. And it's like very deceptive too, and it's going to be clear on a lot of rivers, where we get value and stuff like that, or like if when we can value bet and stuff like that. I think that he's gonna 3-bet, which I think it's pretty clear, and almost everyone watching this video would probably 3-bet on table 4. I mean, it's gonna play a lot better in a heads up pot than it is a multi-way pot. Although I'll say that I think this is a perfect flop to check back. I'll tell you why. First, I think it's a flop that really connects well with like an under the gun opening and 3-bet calling range. And you'd be surprised we actually can a lot of times get it in like relatively bad here. Like our straight draw can easily be no good. And then we kind of just have like a naked flush draw. And of course, like worst case scenarios, he has like ace 10 with nut hearts. And I think that it's a good situation to check back, and it's easy to balance. We can check back sometimes here with like top pair and like a gutter or something like that, or like maybe middle pair and a gutter. I think like if we had an ace queen 10 9 type hand or something, like that's a hand that I think that we could like check back here. So this is going to be a hand where especially we have 50 hands on this guy, and he seems like kind of passive, so I think that we're going to be able to get away with a lot of delayed c-bets too. But more than anything, what's important, I think, is that his range is tight pre. This is a board that really connects with a tight range. I don't expect to get a lot of like check folds on this board against a tight range, so I would prefer to just like check back and get there and weigh our options that way. I would open that on the button. I mean, certainly. Very aggressive guy in the small, so maybe that's one reason we didn't open it. Button looks pretty bad, though. I think we can still profitably open that, at least for min. Like min open it. Also, the thing is about having a high steal percentage on the button. I think a lot of players, like, they just kind of glance at your HUD and they don't really look closely at what your steal is. So they think that if you're stealing a lot, they kind of just think that you're playing a lot of hands. So it's nice to have it's an easy way to increase your VPIP for like a cheap price. You know what I'm saying? And kind of like appear more aggressive than you really are. So we can make a nice value bet on table 1. So good job there. Here table 3, I could go between calling and 3-betting. I'd probably lean towards a 3-bet. Oh my gosh. Well, I think that I'm going to just say that we misclicked, but of course, like that hand's too strong to fold pre. So we call in position. We got a couple of nice hands here. We call in position on table 4 with single suited kings, which I think is fine. I mean, against someone who's this aggressive, and if they're particularly bad, bad in the sense where they've just played 3-bet pots terribly from the perspective of like check folding too much or, something like that. Then I can get behind 3-betting this, but I think that like peeling in position as a default is pretty good. It's good for your range too. I mean, on big carded flops, you're going to get some action, and thinking players are going to be willing to apply more pressure on those boards, which is nice. Here on table 1, I mean, this is kind of a tough spot because of stacks. They're really awkward. I guess I would just call. I mean, he's got a lot of smooth hands, and it's going to be difficult to play out of position with an SPR of basically 2. And so I've mentioned in previous videos how I really try to avoid SPR 2 and like SPR 3 situations. And here, if we 4-bet, we'd be creating one of those. So I'm more inclined to just call. Let's see what we do. We fold. I think that's too tight of a fold, honestly. I mean, I get it. Again, and maybe, maybe I'm incorrect there, but I think that our hand is too strong to fold. But I think that the SPR is really awkward, so I don't really like 4-betting. But I think our hand's just too strong to fold, especially when the cutoff open and then the button 3-bet, the ranges are going to be extra wide. It'd be similar to folding ace king in that kind of situation and hold 'em or something. So let's make sure that we get the action right here on table 4. So we call a c-bet, I bet. Not really keen on raising. I mean, I guess there's a reason for it because he bets small, but I think that raising might be overplaying our hand a little bit. And then here again, I would just call. There's again no real reason to turn our hand into a bluff. We've got bottom pair and a flush draw, and an overpair and just like a lot of things going for us. And now I'm not happy about it, but I would just be showdown bound. I just don't want to turn our kings into a bluff. And I think given the action, I think that 2 pair is going to look us up pretty like frequently enough to where we would have to bomb it in order to make him fold, and I don't think bombing it would be profitable. So we've gone through about half the video, so I think that that's actually a pretty good stopping point. We may be able to make it through the whole thing next time, but I want to like stretch this one out a little bit. So as always, if you have any questions, let me know. Otherwise, I will see you next week. Thanks for tuning in. It's John Bull Prey, aka Casino Crime. Let me know what you think of the videos. And if you'd like me to review your video in the future, please reach out. Thank you. Good luck, guys.